Veremos cómo funciona todo eso.
Okay, we are
Estamos listos.
live. This is the June 17th meeting of the Human Relations Commission. We are recording, we are live. Carlos, I hand it over to you.
Buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon.
Hoy, martes 17 de junio, y siendo las 6:18 damos comienzo a nuestra reunión mensual de la Comisión de Relaciones Humanas.
Of the Human Relations Commission. So we just created some now it's date.
Bien, pasamos al punto número 2, es ajustes de la agenda.
Adjustments.
¿Alguien tiene algún ajuste que hacer en la agenda?
Adjusted agenda adjustments. And you are good. No.
Bien, continuamos al punto número 3. Tenemos que aprobar las minutas de la reunión del mes pasado.
2025 minutes.
¿Alguien
Anyone wants to
quiere hacer una
make a motion?
moción?
I motion to approve.
I second the motion.
Second.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Pasamos al punto número 4, comentario abierto, y le paso la palabra a...
Quiero votar. You need to vote.
Necesitamos un voto. Ah, sí, perdón, necesitamos un voto.
Sí, todos los que están a favor de
Gracias.
Thank you.
Ahora sí pasamos al comentario abierto y le paso la palabra a Cristian.
And I will pass the word over to Christian.
Okay, and this is the part of the meeting where we will open up for public comment. It looks like we have
Parece ser que sí tenemos.
one audience member. If you would like to make public comment, please raise your hand. Awesome. It looks like you are raising your hand, Mark. Before we begin, I'm just going to read off a little prepared script about comments. So,
Y lo voy a exhibir en la pantalla, creo. ¿O no? Vale.
okay.
Luis.
The city has engaged with community members to co-create a vision for productive, meaningful, and inclusive civic conversations. The vision supports physical and emotional safety for community members, staff, and board and commission members, as well as democracy for people of all ages, identities, lived experiences, and perspectives. For more information about this vision and the community engagement processes, please visit the website shown on this. The following are examples of rules of decorum found in the Boulder Revised Code and other guidelines that support this vision. These will be upheld during this meeting. All remarks and testimony shall be limited to matters related to city business. No participant shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation against any person. Obscenity, racial epithets, and other speech and behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes the ability to conduct the meeting are prohibited. Participants are required to sign up to speak using the name they are commonly known by, and individuals must display their whole name before being allowed to speak online. Currently, only audio testimony is permitted online. Okay, so I have stopped sharing my screen. Mark, I see you have raised your hand. I'm going to try.
All right. Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you.
I'm sorry, what was that? You could hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yep.
Okay, great, great. Thanks for this opportunity to speak with you all. So a couple of things before I get to the main point about your meeting. First, there was not any agenda nor minutes posted from the last meeting. But I was able to read and listen to the last meeting's minutes and audio recording and got some information, but it was a more time consuming, so I'm not totally prepared for this. And when I was listening to the audio recording, which is the first time I've ever done that, and the YouTube channel, by the way, sadly, I was not able to understand most of what Carlos was saying because the wonderful interpreters are not present on, their voices are not present. So for those of us who are watching this or hearing it in recording, can't understand that. So I'm not sure you are aware of that. And I'm not sure that anything can be done about it. Technically, it might be a barrier. I don't know if anything can be done about that, but you all just should know that. Also, I'd like you all, I don't know if there's been discussion about allowing in-person participation at your meeting as the Housing Advisory Board allows, but I strongly encourage you to consider that. I think that's the way it used to be done for many years with you all, and I just want to encourage you to reconsider it. So my main topic is the Difficult Conversations project that you are all going to be discussing tonight and have discussed in the past. It is so urgently needed. I just want to really reinforce that it is a real strong need, like right now. And I understand from what I think I understand is you're considering doing this in the fall, but I would say, especially in the context of the horrific Molotov cocktail attacks on the mall, that the city council is considering limiting or even possibly eliminating public comment, and this latest horrific attack, Israeli attack on Iran, all of those make the conversations, difficult conversations topic on the Mideast even more urgent, because I feel like this community is just boiling over on this, and there's no real outlet for this. I also realize that the city is not the best positioned for sponsoring that because of the feelings people have about the city. And yet it may be the only venue that is actively considering this. I love that you're considering partnering with CU, which would be probably a more trusted party involved with holding difficult conversations. And I'm looking forward to hearing how you all are going to discuss it tonight. But I do urge you to make it happen, even as a trial, perhaps sooner rather than later. And we'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Would just open up any response from staff, commissioners. Yeah.
I'll just say, thanks as always, Mark, for caring so much about this issue. Thanks for continuing to bring it to us and like express the urgency. Definitely with you in that. And yeah, I hope you'll stick around to hear about the discussion on it. There's definitely some forward movement on that I'll be sharing with fellow commissioners, hoping to yeah, get some things moving forward. And yeah, definitely recognizing the nuance of like the challenges of having the city do it and the importance of making something happen. So yeah, I hope you stick around and looking forward to you hearing more about what's happening.
Thank you, Mark, for your comments. Echoing what Aaron says, that I hear you and I also feel the urgency around these issues here in the city. If you could share a little bit more about why you feel it's important that we open up in-person comment, that would be helpful for me as a new HRC member.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. Right now I'm having difficulty hearing you all, and that actually underlines one of the difficulties of doing this online. For some reason, I can't see you all. Well, I guess that's part of this public comment, but I'm having a hard time. Before you were coming across very clearly and loudly, but for right now, I'm really straining to hear your comments at this very moment. So just the physicality of being in the room and hearing that is really helpful. And I just feel like it is a more welcoming environment when citizens can attend all commissions and boards. I realize COVID really did a number for public participation. And I realize also that it's easier for people to do things online, and would always want to reserve that option for people to participate in that way. But there's some of us who just get a lot more out of being in person rather than so much online at this point.
And for Elizabeth and Christian, whose and Roberto, whose decision is it for how we take public comment?
I believe it's the clerk's office in relation to the city managers and communications and engagement. So we can certainly just check again and see whether there's any changes to the guidelines.
Okay.
But that's who we follow. We don't tend to, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, the other boards and commissions that also meet in person only take online comments, so it's not kind of a singling out. For example, the tenant advisory committee, the cannabis licensing advocacy board, beverage licensing authority.
I'd love to bring that up for discussion, but we can do that after the comment period.
Okay. Thank you for your.
Y acerca de lo de housing, Mark, vamos a también a discutirlo entre nosotros y a ver si podemos traerlo también a la mesa.
Mark, with regards to housing, we're going to talk among ourselves and then we might bring that to the table.
Y pues tengamos gente que venga a hablar con nosotros mismos, podemos dar comentarios sobre vivienda.
And perhaps people can come and speak with us and give us comments regarding housing. And thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate it.
De nada.
Okay, I pass it back to you, Carlos.
Bueno, gracias por esos comentarios de Amar. Y nuestro punto número 5 son educación, pero creo que no tenemos ninguno, Cristian.
We do not.
No. Bueno, entonces pasamos al punto número 6. Discusiones informales. Aquí tenemos dos diálogos difíciles
Very hard conversations.
y la presentación de Cristian de la Ordenanza de Derechos Humanos.
And this is to do the representation by Christian of human rights.
And I'm wondering if we can also maybe add something about discussing the public participation. Mark brought up. While to, yeah, that's, yeah, I think it's worthwhile to discuss if we can have more in-person public participation, because I see value of that, so I would like to add that to the agenda.
You can discuss that during section 9.
Oh, okay, that works. Yeah, follow-up items. Great.
So this is not tracking with what I got on my screen.
Technology is not
So,
well today.
it's working better than it has in the past, I will say. Which is a low bar. What I can see is, these are the microphones that we're using, so this should be, our conversation should be picked up, on the, sort of these microphones here, so we're good. I think, folks who have tuned in can hear a little bit better.
It's better now.
There we go.
Do you have the ability to close that screen on your laptop?
I'm trying to. I have a different screen completely on my laptop than what's up here.
Right, but it's reading two different parts of your computer screen.
Yeah, you probably have
The
like,
display.
Yes.
try and drag a window to the right or left side of your screen and see it. Yeah.
Oh.
Yay.
There we go. There
Oh,
we go.
you've got two PowerPoints going on.
Oh. Great. I'm not
Okay,
gonna open
so-
up my browser so
No
you
voy
can see
a
all the
abrir mi
tabs there,
browser
but.
para que pueda ver mi documento.
It's always embarrassing.
I suggest you just keep it on this one.
I'm just gonna, yep.
Yeah.
There we go.
Ahí estamos, ahí estamos.
We're gonna go elementary here, so difficult dialogues and interview game. This is a continuation of the conversation that we've been having for quite some time now. Aaron, I would pass it over to you unless you want me to give folks a summary.
I'll share a little bit and then I'll have you fill in and then I'll cap it off.
Okay.
So kind of gist of this is, Christian and I went to meet up with Dr. Jennifer Ho at CU, along with Ami, who created the interview game. And had a really fruitful dialogue. Ami is very vested and interested in this topic. Not only is he, been working with this interview game and the difficult dialogue series, but he's also Israeli and is very connected to this. And he's personally been creating a theater show performance to try and bring some different perspectives, which I haven't witnessed it myself, but it felt very similar to what I saw with Modus Theater doing the BBCP and getting different perspectives. And so we just had like a really generative dialogue that felt like we were all aligned around, let's find some way to collaborate meaningfully. Let's see how the city can partner with CU, CHA, difficult dialogues to move something forward. We floated a few ideas around, such as doing a whole kickoff that might even involve some level of theater performance and involve some level of bringing various city officials. But what felt really important that we were getting at is, yes, the larger we need to look at how we're dialoguing in Boulder. And I think right now it feels really important to touch into this Israel-Palestine thing where there is an increasing amount of tension in our community. And so we all seemed like we were pretty aligned around that. And so the idea was to kind of create some kind of series that could involve some kind of theater or other thing with some city officials as a way to kick off and initiate what could maybe be a series of difficult dialogues, interview games that could involve some city officials, could involve regular people in public, but kind of doing it as a way to get the message out that the city is aware that this is happening and is really here to engage and participate in the process, and to kind of open the floor for others to participate. So that's like a little bit of where we're at, and then, yeah, the idea was assuming there's like enough like agreement here and we all wanna like move forward, then we can kind of enter more dialogue to get clear for like with more of Christian's help of like what city's participation looks like from financial or otherwise, and to be in dialogue with Ami and with Dr. Ho to kind of maybe participate a little bit in the planning process for like that production and for the series. Do you feel like I covered well? Anything you want to add?
I would not add anything. I think you got it.
Yeah, so we'd love to hear kind of any thoughts from y'all. We can start forward.
I think it sounds great, and I'm glad there's a lot of buy-in and excitement, and I think a series of engagements with different audiences would be great. And I'm definitely excited and open to having them come to a meeting, to have a more constructed conversation with the three of us and everybody here.
Great.
What do you think, Carlos?
No estoy de acuerdo, yo creo que es una buena opción tener este tipo de conversaciones.
Yes, I think it's a good idea and it's an option to have these sort of conversations.
Estoy dispuesto a colaborar con todo.
There's no audio, okay. That's from.
That was an earlier one. Yeah, great. So, I'm curious, Christian, if you have a clear sense of like what some good next steps, are there anything that you sense from the conversation we had there that are needed to move forward, or what do you sense is most generative here?
Pretty much what I got in terms of what Ami and Dr. Ho might be looking for is just where we want to go. They seem very open, as you mentioned there, to just kind of like working together with the commission. And so I think what we might need to do is kind of just determine, have some conversation among ourselves, determine like what it is like that we want to do with the interview game, and then also sort of like the difficult dialogues, how we, as you mentioned, there's a couple different like options that got thrown out, examples of ways that the commission and CU could partner. And I think what was kind of asked towards the end of the meeting was just like, what is it that you guys would want to do, or what is it like, who would you want to have in a room during like a interview game or something like that, or what is the topic, or would the topics be, and kind of like what are the goals or outcomes that we would like to see as a group. And so I think that would be kind of identifying that and bringing Dr. Ho and Ami into conversations to see sort of where we can align and sort of move together. It would be what I see as next steps. Yeah,
great. Yeah, so I mean, I think what I would propose is, so I can continue to be like in active dialogue with them and kind of engage and bring some of the perspectives we have here to plan. I don't want to be in the place where we're like waiting like for another month and another month and another month to keep moving. I do think we should invite them here next month, but my hope is that by the time they come to the meeting next month, we can have a lot of things in motion. So most likely, I think that would probably involve, just a few more conversations. I can directly engage with them. Maybe you can be a part just to make sure like the partnerships are really, really well represented. But it sounds to me like the intent is let's plan an event and let's plan a number of series. And so yeah, I'd love kind of what Christian was asking, if there's anything y'all might want to like perspectives you might want to drop in, such as like who should we be representing? Like who should be a part of these series? Like where should we kind of focus a little bit of that dialogue?
Your point, Christian, about what issues do we want to focus on, I think maybe talking amongst us about, do we want to just have it be about the Israeli and Gaza conflict? Or do we want to broaden it? Because we've also had other present day human rights issues like immigration brought to our attention here at the commission that I could see as potential topics for the difficult dialogue or the interview game.
It seems like they're going to be doing, I think, one on immigration in a few months. I definitely think that's important, and I think we should like look at that. And like the sense I get is that might be two different things. Like I think if there's a series, maybe we want to like do a series to address a specific tension, and then we can do another series to address different tensions. And we can also like partner with them on the immigration one. But
Is
they,
the immigration one what they were planning in the fall?
yeah, they're planning on one in
I
the
was
fall.
just gonna jump in
Okay.
and say, at the last meeting I shared out, this is the topic that is gonna happen, I believe it's September 21st or 22nd.
Okay,
And we've been invited by Dr. Ho to co-sponsor and just essentially help with advertising the event. And that sounded like it had the group's support at the last meeting, so I will plan, unless you tell me otherwise, to continue that.
thank you for the refresher.
One thing I would chime in, if I may, is just, of all the possible places to start the next phase of conversation, it's a good idea to think first and very specifically about what the impact and the change factor or what the outcomes are that you want to see, and really have that be the guidepost. Maybe second to that, gut check with, again, scope. Because if we're
I'm sorry, check what?
focus on the scope of what is the scope and the purpose of the HRC and how does that influence the way in which you approach it? Somebody could hear HRCs talking about, you know, Israel, Gaza, Hamas war, and we're talking about immigration, and have it be a conversation that's this big. And the HRC's role is actually community relations issues and, you know, human relations issues that focus on the city of Boulder. So I think it's worth spending some time in that nuance to make sure that this next step with difficult dialogues and the interview game is really very, very uniquely focused on what your role is, and not let's talk about these topics, which could be interpreted a bunch of different ways. And so just that I think we can, provide some, if it's helpful, you know, framing, not that you can't, but if any of those things are helpful, those are processes we use in the city all the time, just for kind of planning, making sure we're first clear on like, what do we want to have? How do we want people to feel? What do we want people to do after this experience? And then back up from there to say, okay, now what are the logistics look like?
I think for me, experiencing the interview game, what I took away with it was hopefully after even people with very differing beliefs coming together and being able to live together in a peaceful way and still disagree on this really important issue is what I'm framing this as, and that is how it is local for me, but I'm curious what you two think.
I mean, yeah, I think for me, very similar, like my interest, like to me, human relations, we're looking at the relations of people in Boulder. And right now, there is oftentimes a lack of like being able to find common ground around topics. And this is one where I think it is the most present. It's actually why this is, I think, different from immigration, because immigration is an issue where almost everybody in Boulder is super pro-immigrant. I'm sure there's some who are not, but like this is one that's very divisive within our community. Like people are very heated on either side of the spectrum, and it's creating ruptures in our community. And so to me, part of our responsibility as the Human Relations Commission is to to address the divisiveness that's present. And I think the way we do that is kind of exactly what you're saying, creating an opportunity like this that enables us to root more into our shared humanity, find that common ground where we can hold the fact that we may disagree on this international issue, but we still care about being good neighbors to each other.
I don't have super good answers to the who to bring in. I'm especially not wanting to create more context in which council members' words can be used against them to fuel division. And so that's one thing I'm thinking about. Like, yes, I think on the one hand, it would be great to have some city council representation. And I'm not sure what the purpose of that would be, because again, I would be concerned that their words would be used against them, so.
Totally. Yeah, and there's definitely some dialogue about like, how many of these dialogues are gonna be witnessed publicly, how much of them are that, like, there's an interesting idea that's floated of like getting the council people to do it, but not having it be a recorded public thing, just having it be an experience they all commit to going through together. And same for opening that to other members of the community. And then from that, people can go and share out their experience, but that's what, yeah, they've found works best, is where it's not as like a witnessed kind of ordeal. You got something?
Yeah, just kind of to expand on that point, the interview game itself, and you can see on Ami's website, which I can share, you can really use the tool, use the game itself for a huge variety of purposes. And so that is, I think, one of the things that I think we would want to be like super clear on going into a conversation with Dr. O and Ami, so that way Ami is the creator of the tool itself, feels comfortable saying like, yes, this is something that I would be okay to license out to the Human Relations Commission. And Dr. Ho is the person who would be volunteering her time to train the commissioners, train us on using the tool. Knows kind of like the lens with which we're trying to use it, to have when using it, so she can guide us best through whatever training it looks like. So just to, you can do it amongst family members just to like get to know each other a little bit more. You can do it as team building for council, commission, work groups, et cetera. And you can also use it to have some really fruitful dialogue around divisive topics. And so there's a whole myriad of reasons, uses for the tool. And so just something that we would want to have in mind.
Una pregunta. Para todo esto de conversaciones difíciles y para entrevistas, ¿tenemos que usar el tiempo de la comisión o podemos usar un tiempo fuera?
That's a really good question. Roberto looks like he's got an answer. So that's the time.
Only two of you can meet together outside of here at a time. So if you want to form a small group to do that work, on behalf of the commission, you can do that. You cannot, however, meet outside of providing notice and an opportunity to be heard.
How much notice do we need to give, and are there like protocols in place to give that notice if we decide we want to meet another time?
Yeah, absolutely. In an emergency situation, 24 hours, but the normal protocol would be what the city already does. So if you want to meet outside of the normal time as a group, then it would be just the normal notice that is given.
How much is
which would mean I have to make I have to notify the daily camera by 5 p.m. on Wednesday. The week before, we would be looking to make it because it needs to be run in the public notice section of that Sunday's edition, so Wednesday before.
Roberto, there are some, not exceptions to that rule, but differences between if it's a training, if it's a special event or something that doesn't constitute like a meeting. Is that correct
That is
for any
correct.
board or commission?
So for example, if it was a meeting for the commission to receive a training, then it would not be open to the public because normal commission business would not be discussed and there would be no voting on issues. So that you can certainly do whenever that you want for training purposes, without notice. to the community. Good.
I've learned some things.
All of these are state laws, not just local laws, right? Which means our city council has no power to change most of these things.
Correct.
Good to know.
The sunshine law is a state law. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not a Boulder law.
I don't want to get rid of the one that's outdated to like
Yeah.
have the story a little better. Yes.
Did that conversation answer your question, or do you still have? Okay. I guess what would be you thinking next to keep this moving along, Aaron? It sounds like you're going to.
Yeah, so I'll keep in dialogue with Dr. Ho and Ami, if either of you feel like joining. I guess I can bring one more of you in, can bring both of you in for that. But yeah, then I'll just kind of be in the planning process, and I guess try and have enough of a thing planned that by the time we come back next month, that we can like vote and be like, cool, we're doing it, and hopefully it's already in motion. I'm not quite sure how to navigate beyond that, but I don't know if you have any insights.
I mean, it sounds like we could potentially if we know for sure we want to get trained in the interview game.
Yeah.
We could schedule that training
Yeah.
between now and
Right.
next meeting. And then we'd be ready to go,
Right,
regardless of what it looks like, what the events look like.
true.
I think that makes sense to me.
It is, I mean, will also depend on Dr. Ho's availability, and then our ability to get, if there is cost, we do have some budget for this, just need to, there's a couple other things that would need to happen. Not quite sure if it would be able to happen between now and next meeting, but we can certainly try to make that happen within what we have in our control.
Got it, makes sense for sure.
Yeah, and then we can be in dialogue with them. Like, it sounds like we have go ahead to like, where the Human Relations Commission to partner with them on an event of that. And so me and Christian can continue to be in dialogue about what that event will look like. Yeah. I guess we should probably take that to a vote. Like I moved to vote on partnering with CHA Difficult Dialogues on this event.
Second.
It's, I don't think you need to.
Okay, I was gonna say, I don't think you need to.
Great.
We've already.
Moving on.
That was fun. Even the ones by like.
Good practice.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna use this up, Carlos. We are.
Your presentation.
La presentación de Es la ordenanza de derechos humanos.
So, what I have here is just I'm gonna try to. Okay, cool. Sweet. So I'm working on outreach presentation that I wanted to bring to you all just to get some feedback, and then I think it can also help inform a little bit or at least give you all a reminder. Going into in the fall of this year, we'll be having a dinner and a conversation. I don't know if that like what we actually landed on with city council, who requested meeting with the HRC and hearing about sort of the work that is going on within the Office of Human Rights, landlord tenant relations, and a couple other topics that I'm blanking on right now.
We'll get back to you on.
Yeah,
So we won't be the only commission, you will.
the only commission, the request was pretty broad.
Issues should be different.
Which we can, yeah, so what we have, what I have here is a presentation that I'm going to be taking on the road. Wanted to bring to you all for some feedback, for your thoughts as commissioners. And then we also have Roberto here because there are a couple different spots where I thought we might have some questions about the commission's quasi judicial role. There's mention of that throughout this presentation, and so he was kind enough to join us. So let me get started here. Here's just a quick agenda. If I'm presenting to an organization or a community group, I just do a quick round of introductions. We're just gonna skip right through that. We're gonna go through a brief history of the Human Rights Ordinance, touch on the Human Relations Commission, go through what the Human Rights and Failure to Pay Wages ordinances are, how to file a claim, what to expect when filing a claim, and then some time for question and answer at the end if we have it. So up here, just the purpose for the presentation, to get folks a basic information about the Human Rights ordinance, how the city addresses discrimination in the community, for people who live and work within the city. So just to get folks sort of thinking, when we hear human rights, what comes to mind? What kind of words, phrases, situations, topics come to mind? You can just pop them out.
Access to healthcare.
Access to healthcare, clean water, justice, housing, vivienda. Keep those in mind as we go through the presentation. There will be a couple more stops for questions as well along the way. So the quick history of the ordinance. You may recognize the gentleman on the left-hand side of the screen here. There's this mural on the side of this very building as Penfield Tate II. In 1972, I believe he was mayor when the Human Rights Ordinance itself got passed by, or he was a member of Boulder City Council, excuse me, when the Human Rights Ordinance was passed, and the goal at that time was to create prompt local protection, and to protect classes that were not included in federal or state, discrimination laws. A couple times, in the eighties, the early 1980s, Boulder City Council adds parenthood, pregnancy, and custody of a minor child to classes. Protected against housing discrimination, and then in 1987, another update to the ordinance to include sexual orientation to the anti-discrimination ordinance. A more recent update happened in 2000, where gender variance was added to a list of protected classes. This is also a very brief history of the ordinance. You can find a good amount of information in the Daily Camera's sort of periodical files, as well as Boulder Weekly has a pretty good write-up of the history of the ordinance. So the Human Rights Ordinance was passed as a recommendation of the Human Relations Commission, which is now you all. Should be a group of 5, however, at this moment we are 3, but that's okay. We will be looking for 2 more. The goal is to have a group of 5 City of Boulder residents who make up the diverse composure of our community. We hold monthly meetings, and our goal is to foster mutual respect and understanding and to create an atmosphere conducive to the promotion of amicable relations among all. The commission also, when called on to do so, will serve as a quasi judicial hearing board for human rights ordinance cases when those get appealed. And we'll touch on that in a little bit. So earlier we touched on what came to mind with the term human rights. We heard justice, housing, access to healthcare, access to clean drinking water. Thinking about populations in particular, who is protected from discrimination in the city of Boulder, or who might we think is protected from discrimination in the city of Boulder? And you can just pop it out as well. Popcorn it out.
People with disabilities.
People with disabilities,
Homeless.
homeless folks,
Like minorities from a racial standpoint.
racial minorities,
Elderly people, senior citizens.
senior citizens,
Women.
women,
Pregnant women.
pregnant women, yes, yes. In specific circumstances,
Queer people.
Kids.
kids, queer people, awesome. So the Human Rights Ordinance protects against discrimination in 3 specific areas: housing, employment, and public accommodation. It prohibits discrimination based on these two columns right here. And so we have ancestry, color, creed, gender variance, genetic characteristics, immigration status, national origin, physical disability, mental disability, source of income, sexual orientation, etc.
Not age.
Age is a specific, only in employment, I should note this here. Only in the area of employment, and when it is called out specifically in the ordinance, age means 40 years old and over. Is the only time age comes up. I've had that come up in other folks reaching out saying that they were discriminated against, and I have found that it is actually not included under the ordinance, and so it may have happened, I don't know, I can't posit one way or the other, but it's out of my wheelhouse.
Los adentro de lo que puedo hacer.
So we have
Así que donde.
the human rights ordinance. Any other thoughts or questions, just looking at this here?
Que tenemos aquí en la pantalla.
Can you share just what more about what public accommodation means?
So public accommodation would look like someone was denied a service at a business that was operating within the city limits. Somebody was denied a good or essentially a good or service from a business in the city folder based on one of these characteristics. So that is the human rights ordinance. Also within my wheelhouse is the failure to pay wages ordinance. This one is pretty cut and dry. This essentially means it prohibits an employer operating within the city from withholding or from not paying or compensating their workers for the work done. Unless each of these items are true, and it is a very limited and narrow scope. So the employer is actually unable to pay the employee. When they were hired, the employer believed they could pay the employee. As soon as they were aware of their inability to pay, the employee was informed. Written acknowledgement of the debt owed to the employee has been provided, and the employer has not brought anybody else on since not paying their employer. I have fielded several failure to pay wages complaints. I have never seen, in my time at least, all of these conditions met. So it is a very narrow situation. Roberto, anything else to add to either the human rights ordinance or failure to pay wages? Cool.
No, bien.
Okay, yes.
Yes.
So the issue of the age and being 40 tracks federal laws.
Entonces, ya sería pues después de danzas sería el
Okay. So to help us wrap our heads around what this might look like in our community. We have Reggie, who is a completely fictional character. Reggie is a student. The name of the student that I had when I worked in middle school in LA, and the first name that popped up when I was trying to come up with a fictional character. Reggie's gonna be a renter with a housing voucher, looking for an apartment. He finds one that he likes. It has an advertisement saying, does not accept Section 8 vouchers. Does everybody know what a housing voucher or a Section 8 voucher is?
It'd be worth describing.
Okay, so a housing voucher, or commonly referred to as a Section 8 voucher, is a form of government assistance in which a tenant who earns below a certain income level receives assistance from the federal government to pay their rent. Theoretically, they're not paying more than 30% of their income towards rent, because that is what Housing and Urban Development has determined is the acceptable sort of amount of money, amount of a monthly income that somebody should be paying towards their housing. So we have Reggie. He has his voucher. He sees an apartment that he likes. Notes this one thing that he's like, I don't know about.
No sé.
We're gonna come back to Reggie. If you think that you have been, you or somebody that you know has experienced discrimination, this is how you claim protection in the under the human rights or failure to pay wages ordinance. We have our form online in English and Spanish. I have physical copies available if you would like to fill out a physical copy. So you fill one out, you turn it in, I reach out. Our process typically goes, I will review the complaints. When possible, the ordinance directs me to try to steer the parties to resolve in mediation, which we have available for free through our Community Resolution and Mediation Center, which is also in Housing and Human Services. And do folks know what mediation is? Has folks participated in the mediation? An idea? It is a alternative dispute resolution process, basically facilitating conversation between two parties in disagreement to try to reach a mutually acceptable agreement. If mediation is not possible, or if it's not practicable using the language of the ordinance, we'll move to an investigation. I'll interview the parties involved, any other relevant parties, collect documentation, and then generate findings of fact, whether they're not. I can say, based on the information and evidence in front of me, that there is probable cause the ordinance has been violated, or not, and I'll act accordingly to resolve. Depending on the type of claim you have a specific time frame to file your complaint. Employment is 6 months, housing is 1 year, public accommodation 2 months. For failure to pay wages, it does not specify a statute of limitations, so we will apply the sort of municipal standard statute of limitations of 12 months for those complaints. Questions?
Geographically, if a person lives in Boulder but works in Denver, or vice versa, they work in Boulder but live in Denver, does it only apply to employers, landlords, and businesses in the city of Boulder? Okay.
So somebody lives in Denver but is doing their work in Boulder, they can file a complaint. Somebody lives in Boulder, doing work in Denver, I have no jurisdiction.
Okay, got it.
It is limited to within the city limits. I would steer those folks, I do get those calls frequently, or outside of city limits, which we'll touch on in a little bit here. I'll direct those folks to other resources available. We're coming back to Reggie. Reggie decides, I'm gonna give it a try. I don't think that's right, that they are saying they can't accept the vouchers. So he doesn't tell the landlord, goes to see the apartment. He applies. He gets a rejection from the landlord. The landlord says, I'm not going to rent to you because you got a voucher. Reggie feels like something's not right about this. He looks online, finds the Office of Human Rights, and he decides to file a complaint. This is a little bit more in-depth of a what to expect, but this is my process. Confirm the complaints within jurisdiction. I'll contact both parties, notify them. I'll contact, the one party is contacting me, and so I'll notify the other party named. So in this case, Reggie's landlord. That a complaint has been filed against them, and schedule a time to have a conversation. when applicable, coordinate mediation, when not applicable, or if mediation does not result in a agreement, which it happens. Started an investigation, and I developed findings of fact, and facilitate resolution where, there is a finding that the ordinance has been violated. So these are just some possible outcomes. Folks resolve in mediation. That is pretty, our mediation team has a fairly good resolution rate. Findings of no probable cause or dismissing. Finding of probable cause or appeal or hearing, which is where you all would come in. So, coming back to Reggie. I investigated it. Mediation did not happen. The landlord said, I didn't want to, which is within their right. They were not willing to mediate. I got some screenshots of the listing. I got a denial email from Reggie's landlord. In my interview, Reggie's landlord told me, I don't rent to people with Section 8 vouchers. I make findings that there is probable cause the ordinance was violated, and the resolution that I can make happen is make the landlord aware they cannot discriminate on source of income as a reason for, they cannot deny somebody for housing based on their source of income. This part here is important. I get questions around folks who have potential situations where they feel they've been discriminated against, they feel they've been wronged, it's an injustice, and they want to see some type of punishment or some type of wrongs righted. And so we're looking for recompense or some type of payback for what happened. That is not what the ordinance is intended to do. The ordinance is intended to correct the wrong and kind of get folks back on their way. So what I can do, what is within my power, is to make the landlord aware that there are laws protecting tenants against this form of discrimination, that they did in fact discriminate. I cannot necessarily force them to house that person because there may be other reasons why they would not rent to that person, or that housing option may no longer be available. So I need to just make sure that they understand where they went wrong and that it does not happen again. Question?
Voucher de besos. ¿Es válido en cualquier tipo de vivienda? O yo sé que hay ciertas viviendas que tiene la ciudad o el para eso, para esas viviendas.
So somebody who has a housing voucher can use it in whatever sort of rental housing there is. There's two types of vouchers. One that is portable, where a tenant can go and use it wherever, kind of like it's just money that you use to pay your rent. There's a different type of voucher, still technically called a voucher, that is called project-based, where the housing assistance is tied to the actual unit, the apartment. And so the assistance goes with somebody, the other, whoever's living in that apartment is receiving that type of assistance. So that's a good distinction that we incorporate in here. But for this purpose, it is, we're assuming it is the housing choice voucher, which people use wherever. And that applies to mobile homes, it applies to apartments, single family houses, all types of rental housing.
You mentioned some of the people bringing the cases forward, they want some sort of punishment. Is your ability to hold people accountable different for the failure to pay? For example, will people actually get paid?
Yes, so I have a variety, based on who I'm presenting to, I have a variety of different scenarios. For failure to pay, housing is the most common, so I brought that one here. For failure to pay wages, if there is a finding that somebody has not been paid for work that they did, then yes, we would move to have the employer pay.
And if it's against the law, then is there potential legal, are there potential legal pathways for the person to be punished if they're breaking the law?
For not paying somebody or for discrimination?
Like, yeah, for discrimination.
There are other places that they can present a complaint where there's a little bit more like teeth to what the enforcement aspect. So that is a conversation that I have with folks, is like realistically, if there is a finding that the ordinance has been violated in this case, this is what a resolution would look like. Is that something that is of interest for you in pursuing? Or here's where else you may go and pursue damages, because there's now with the passage of time, the state and specifically Escada, I think a little bit more with what the enforcement than maybe when the ordinance was created. And so folks can in fact pursue damages for claims through the state, for example. Roberto, do you have anything else to add to that one? Okay. Other questions? Okay. So here I have some data. From 2024, which should be what you all, a more complete year, what you all saw at the retreat last year. You'll see in the top right-hand corner, the money that got paid to workers for failure to pay wages complaints. It is a much more cut and dry kind of situation, rather than discrimination where we see 19 claims, one being resolved. The remainder being dismissed for a whole variety of reasons. Many being because we were counting, my opinion, a little bit more liberally what a claim was. And they were out of jurisdiction, and so I would not necessarily consider those a claim. Other times, there was an investigation or there was a mediation attempted, and the claimant, the person bringing the complaint, didn't follow through, or there is a finding of no probable cause that the ordinance is violated, and that person did not appeal. So this is what I have here. if somebody does disagree with my findings, which they're well within their rights to do, what can they do? They can request a quasi judicial hearing with the Human Relations Commission, where you as commissioners would preside over a public hearing. And ask questions of the parties involved. You can, I believe, compel those involved to appear.
Yes, you have the authority to administer oaths, that is, make people testify under oath under the penalty of perjury, and you can assign and issue subpoenas.
And you may recall, going back to like the retreat, I am one person looking at the situation through the lens with which I conduct my work, and I do that in partnership with Roberto. If someone appeals and brings it to the commission, you all may apply different lenses because you have different perspectives, you have different worldviews, you have different just points of view. And so that is something that I think is truly interesting and unique to this process, that somebody can bring that to a commission of their community members to have another look. There's not, once you all would serve in this role, there's, to my knowledge, no sort of next step if the complainant disagrees with the finding, like in terms of the city's involvement necessarily, right?
Say that again?
So there's no, like, if somebody disagrees with what the commission does, there's no further like appeal that they can, yeah.
There is.
There it is, oh, then I need to change this.
They can file what's called a 10684 appeal with the state district court in Boulder.
Okay. So this will, if somebody wants to file with a different agency, here are the agencies that I'm referring folks to. The Colorado Civil Rights Division, Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity, or Equal Employment Opportunity. That is my process. That is it for what I have for my presentation. Do you all have any questions around process, your involvement, just general other questions? In terms of feedback on the presentation itself, or the content, the format, I would be very open and happy to get your thoughts on that as well.
You mentioned different audiences and you were taking it on the road, where who might potential audiences be?
So my idea would be to, and I worked in partnership with Ingrid when she was in this role and I was at community mediation. We present to nonprofit organizations in Boulder, folks who are interfacing with community members who may have trust, may have more exposure to populations who might be experiencing discrimination, to make them aware this exists, this process is here, this is what it looks like, this is how to connect somebody. And so places like our Family Resource Center, our other city agencies such as our Family Resource Schools, Our Latin facing organizations like Centro Amistad, El Comité. I also work with meet with on occasion the district attorney's office, and they have referred a case or two over to me and vice versa. So anywhere that is serving populations that I am not in Boulder is essentially what I would be hoping to present this to.
One thing I guess I would wanna know if I was serving people who might file complaints, or if I might wanna file a complaint, is kind of like, if you have obviously de-identified testimonials or just quotes of like, this is what people who have filed a claim through this office have experienced, that would be really helpful to give a little bit more a human dimension to this. Like, this is a process, but it is to serve human rights. So what are the feelings and experiences of people who go through this process? Is what I would like to know.
And I have some of that. I've been doing follow-up surveys with claimants from the past, going back to 2021. There's quite a bit of work to do in terms of, I think, establishing trust in the process. And I've gotten some positive feedback. It's kind of been all over the place, but I can definitely try to build in some of that testimonial there.
Pregunta.
I have a question.
¿Puedes tenerla en español?
Have that in Spanish?
That is the intention. I will have the services that are offered in English and Spanish. We'll have it in English and Spanish.
Otra pregunta. ¿La podemos presentar en la reunión de CIMAS?
¿De CIMA?
Ajá.
I don't see one, yeah. That would be a terrific audience to present to. Yeah.
Okay.
CMOB is does everybody know what CMOB is? It's a coalition of mobile home owners.
The meeting I missed, I wanted to.
Yeah.
Ask a question to the commissioners as well.
One thing that we talk about a lot among staff is that and I think you've seen this, in the difference between people who feel as though they've been discriminated against and people who can really kind of be helped, or even failure to pay wages. Who can the difference between people who are seeking the service want to be able to talk and get some relief to a painful experience, right? And for whatever they're feeling or whatever they've experienced, the human rights ordinance is not always a vehicle, right, where they can get that relief. And like Christian said at the very beginning, one of our goals as staff is to make sure that people who are have been discriminated against and are feeling that, are experiencing wage theft or feel as though that might be happening, is about the confidence to be able to come and say, I want to see if I could get some help and some relief through this process. And that's kind of a hard thing to share, both like, hey, this ordinance exists, we want everybody to know about it, it's important. Because it tells something about how we think people should be treating one another in our community. And if you come to receive this service, there might not be anything we can actually do for you. Like it's a hard, those are both true and they're really hard to talk about when it's about inspiring confidence and trust that if you come, we will try to help you, even though we actually don't know what the outcome is going to be. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up. Our hope is that this is a way to have those conversations as well. And so just wonder what your kind of thoughts and reactions are for how we can try to build that in. And I say we, I mean, Christian's taking this on the royal we of how we can help share this information out there so that we have more people in the community know that it exists and take notice and make use of it if they do have a painful discriminatory experience. So yeah, just would love your thoughts about that.
I go back to, I would like some sort of testimonial of someone, especially who went through it and didn't see necessarily the accountability that they went in wanting to see, but maybe had an experience of feeling validated or knowing that that landlord wouldn't discriminate against Section 8 voucher holders in the future. Something like that would be helpful. But I hear you, that is a tough part of the ordinance.
Yo creo que otra manera de hacerla saber también es con los conectores comunitarios, traerla a los conectores, presentársela y que ellos también pasen la voz.
Now, this is kind of just like a introduction. We have a conversation coming up towards the end of this year with our city council, who has requested to have some discussion around this. What might you all else like want to know about the ordinance, the work, the sort of yeah, I guess the ordinance and the work going into that conversation, or do you want to know more? Is there desire for like a deeper dive into the history or the whatever that looks like?
Esta presentación la vas a incluir en el paquete para el próximo que pones cada mes.
I can do that if you would like.
Entonces, yo creo que nosotros podemos volverla a leer, estudiarla, y si tenemos alguna pregunta o alguna sugerencia, la podíamos presentar para la próxima reunión.
Okay.
¿Están de acuerdo?
I would like to have it included. I also guess, just as we move closer to that meeting with the council, would like as much context as we can have, so that because we have such minimal interaction with the, especially with like your part of the process, and Carlos, you haven't been on a quasi judicial board, have you? Okay, so none of us have participated in that. So I guess I want to be more clear on like what they're looking for from us, like, I don't know if this is about the challenges they've been having in their meetings, or, but we can't really speak in a experiential way about the human rights ordinance and the violation process that you go through. So I would like to just know what they, what can the three of us offer them?
Yes. Look into, I don't have a whole lot of.
Yeah, we'll be working on getting a little bit more clarity on, a little closer to the meeting on exactly if there are more specific things they want to talk about. I don't know that it's necessarily you are suddenly need to transform into legal experts on the human rights ordinance. That's actually not what you're here to do, because it's your original job. Probably more of a dialogue, but I think it's something that you could, think about exploring at your retreat, for example, which will happen, separate topic, scheduling for the retreat. What might it be helpful for the HRC, for you and your role in this community, to understand about how people are, who are among a protected class, like, what does that look like? Maybe whether or not it can be directly addressed through the ordinance. What is that, who is experiencing that levels of discrimination? What does that look like in Boulder in 2025? Might not be the same as, when the ordinance first came about. And what are some ways that, HRC members can help be ambassadors and kind of share that information? I mean, Carlos, you mentioned the connectors, and that's absolutely a great idea, and it's you all, right? Like, what kind of knowledge, as Christian said, might you want to have that we can help with, explore together? How can we collectively better understand what people are experiencing in our community? Where the ordinance might be able to bring some relief, or at least we want people to try. And what are some other areas, outside the ordinance where there's a task, right, for us to work on. So, I mean, those might be some other ways to just think about this, this topic. Thinking about the presentation, kind of coming into the retreat time, and thinking about how you might want to focus on this deepen learning and engagement. Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you, and I will make sure to include this in the packet of my follow-up as well after the meeting. Cool. Pass it back to you, Carlos.
Gracias, Cristian. Vamos al update de la ciudad del estado de la ciudad.
So I have a few points here, and one that is not up here because it got sent out this afternoon. But as mentioned before, we have Juneteenth events. Monday of this week was the flag raising right around the corner over here. So you should see the Juneteenth flag. Now displayed. Thursday is the holiday. City offices are closed on Thursday. On Thursday itself, Mishanli has the 2025 Juneteenth celebration from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. There will be a number of music, speakers, and celebration going on over there. I will send you more information in my follow-up for Immigrant Heritage Month as well. On Saturday, June 21st, I should say. So this Saturday at Dairy Arts, Modus Playback Theater has What's Your Immigrant Heritage Story? And then on Friday at the Museum of Boulder, almost all day from 9:30 to 2:30, you can see viajeros in history and art, or travelers in history and art. And I believe this will be a display of, and sort of the culmination of a week-long summer camp that has been going on for students. And so you can get to see some of the work of those young folks who have been participating throughout the week. The last thing that did get added was the actual discussion with city council was scheduled for the 21st, I believe, yes. So the 21st, which would take place our October, not October 21st, would take place of our Thursday, or excuse me, October HRC meeting, sorry, it's been a long day. From 6 to 8, roughly. Anything else to add, Elizabeth?
Just that if you have any time, just questions about other programs or kind of projects in the city, any other updates you'd like us to share. It's kind of a wide world and wild world, so sometimes we take a guess at things you might wanna know about. But if you have specific questions or things you'd like us to address in the staff update, reaching out to Christian ahead of time is the best way for us to be prepared and get you the answers you're looking for.
Cool. That's next, Carlos.
Entonces pasamos al punto número 7, perdón, 8, que son las actualizaciones de los comisionados.
Updates on the commissioners.
Si quieren empiezo yo.
If you want, I can start.
Nada más les voy a dar la actualización de la reunión que tuvimos con la policía en la con los residentes de la comunidad de Orchard Grove. Yo creo que fue una conversación muy fructífera. Tuvimos 4 policías que hablaron con la comunidad. Fueron 3 oficiales de policía y un detective que estuvieron ahí. Y yo creo que estuvo bien, la gente hizo preguntas, los policías les dieron la información que querían saber y creo que todo salió muy bien.
How was the turnout of the people that were there?
Cristian dice que contó 25 personas.
Oh, wow.
Hubo poca, pero sí se vio gente. Sí. Y pues sí hizo falta más gente, pero yo creo que la vamos a estar informando y trayendo. También lo que estuvimos platicando con Lorenzo es quizás realizar una visita ahorita que los niños están de vacaciones, llevarlos al departamento de policía, a que conozcan el departamento de policía. Vamos a ver si lo podemos programar, Cristian. Eso es todo por mi parte.
No major updates.
My only update is I went to the Modus Theater Juvenile Justice event a few weeks ago. And that was really incredible, people who had been justice involved as young children. And they wove their stories together, and there was a really powerful political message on what we could do as people in the state of Colorado to support more equitable, supportive distribution, particularly of the funds that go towards incarcerating young people rather than rehabilitating them in community programs. And that was beautiful. They lost their National Endowment of the Arts funding, so they were hoping to take that on the road, like you, Christian, but they're doing a big fundraiser right now. So if you know anyone that's looking to give to a great cause, that is one of them. And I will definitely keep my ear to the ground about if there's any time to call or legislator or state reps about those bills coming up, because it affects young people in the city of Boulder as well.
In your person,
Yeah. Yeah.
Entonces, continuamos con el punto número 9, que es los puntos de seguimiento.
Yes, so from today, I have that, sorry, I'm just afraid to touch anything over here.
I've already seen everything, so you can't really mess it up.
But I'm afraid to like switch and take notes, so I'm gonna real quick when we end, write out my follow-up. But it's basically continue, Erin, you're going to continue the conversation with difficult dialogues with Dr. Ho and Ami. And so I'm available to support, love to be a part of that. And then I will make sure that you all have a copy of the presentation, not this one, but the other one that I shared tonight. I think that is it for now.
Another thing, just inquiring about any changes to the guidelines for in-person public comment.
Did you send Kira a thank you note?
I did send Kara a thank you note.
Okay.
And then as I was looking or thinking through, something that I should have put in staff update, I suppose, but I forgot to is next Tuesday was the date. I put this in the email for you all about the meeting today, but also next Tuesday is the date that worked for most for the appreciation with for JH and Picker, and so more information to come on that, but please do save that time.
So it'll be next Tuesday at 5:30.
The 24th, yes. Yes, and then I think it's the conversation on the public comment, or is that a follow-up point for me?
It's a follow-up point.
Yeah.
Just for us to get a little bit clarification and hear about if there are any changes to those
Yeah,
guidelines.
I'd love to like know a little like historical context, like was in-person comment a thing before COVID, and is there any discussion happening around it? Because I totally agree with Mark, like I think the lack of in-person comment is like inhibiting a little bit more of the engaged feeling, getting more people participating in this, so I just love any clarity on what's happening there, and if there's anything we can do to help that along.
Okay.
Christian, one other thing is that at the end of this, or no, happening now is also recruiting, not now this second. Recruiting for the 2 vacant positions on the HRC. So if you have people that you think would be great who live in the city, please encourage them to watch for the application, reach out with any questions. We will be continuing to think of people, organizations who might want to help spread the word.
Yeah, so we'll recruit for 2 people.
Correct.
Yeah, I think it was till June 31st to July 18th is the.
Yep. And we had to be able to share like some of the things that you're already planning on doing for the remainder of 2025 and perhaps through 2026, like getting trained in the interview game, you know, focusing on the ordinance, you know, other things that you might talk about at the retreat, but are good things to people say, well, what might I be doing if I were to join? And we'll talk about it. So anyway, your help in spreading the word would be great.
One more thing, kind of related to the public comment. I have like a curiosity, just because like, you know, the Sunshine Law clearly serving a great purpose and also clearly creates some tension. One curiosity for me is like, is there any possibility of us having some like publicly visible thing that we can dialogue asynchronously with, similar to the hotline? Like, is that at all possible?
Like between meeting conversation on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not thinking about it.
Yeah, because just like the inability for like the group as a whole to communicate asynchronously, just feels like it makes things take a long time to get moving. And I appreciate that the council, they meet, 4 times a month, and they also have the hotline, have a little bit of async, and I just think it would be really helpful if we could have any kind of system that enables us to stay in sync a little more like asynchronously between meetings. So just dropping that in.
Yeah, I mean, currently you can send a note. I mean, other boards, commissions, you can say, Christian and I met, here's what we talked about. There just can't, and Roberto will check, and Christian will check me on this. There can't be like any dialogue that feels like a meeting happening when you're not actually having a meeting.
Yeah, but that
But
means.
there's nothing preventing a member from reaching out by email to other commissioners or saying, I'll give you a call. There's lots of ways you can communicate with each other, not more than 2 people at the same time.
Although my understanding is like, if we're talking about things, even if it's like me talking to Carlos and then me talking to Emily, it's like, if we're kind of talking about the same thing, there's like the daisy chain, but I know that's created some like legal precedent. And so it just feels like we're unable to like keep things moving. I'm just be really curious if there's any way to create some systems around that.
Good question.
No. Because to keep things moving is in the form of a continuous meeting.
But can you have a continuous meeting that's publicly visible, like the hotline is? The hotline is a continuously visible public meeting.
Except that it's not, it's a forum in which city council is asking questions of staff.
But they're also dialoguing with each other.
Yeah. But I'll keep thinking about it because I like the forward progress-ness of where you want to get to.
Yeah. That's right now, like my deep inquiry around this is like, how can we work within this? And if not, are there anything that we can go and talk to our like state legislators, try and get them to like make it a little more workable? So I'd love to just have any clarity on that. Yeah.
Should we
Yeah,
all be
it's-
subscribed to the hotline?
Huh?
Should we all be subscribed to the hotline?
We should, yeah, I think it's useful. I mean, it's a lot to keep track of, but I think it is useful to like keep a pulse on what people are thinking. Yeah. There. The last point.
Bueno, creo que es toda nuestra reunión. Vamos a finalizar siendo las 8 de la noche. Vamos a dar por terminada nuestra reunión y solicito una moción, por favor.
So moved.
Second.
El voto.
Voting.
8 o'clock. Good job.
Muchas gracias a todos. Tengan buena noche.